Arlene, what time was he supposed to be here? I certainly hope he's coming. Well, sometimes these programs require close coordination, but I've got confidence in him. For 14 years, he chased the dream, and he caught it. Kill it.
Thank you. I found a hitchhiker back in the back. He ain't heavy. He's my brother. He's a good man. Well, what a special week we've had. It's been pretty interesting, to say the least. A lot of good things happening. A lot of excitement about the future of this community. And there's such part of it. Volkswagen came to town. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then I want to talk a little bit about the future of this community. Ron Littlefield came in with me, and Ron is the fourth mayor that I've worked with on Enterprise South. And he said this morning when he and I spoke to the manufacturers breakfast that I had worn out 3.5 mayors. And I passed on the opportunity to discuss what kind of half he was. But as we've been through the last few weeks, Mayor Littlefield has been a great partner. He's easy to work with. He's got his heart in the right place about doing what's right for this community. He has a long history with this community, and he's been a pleasure to work with. And let's give him a round of applause. Mr. Mayor, where are you, Ron? Did he leave? Yeah. Thank you. Well, he's absolutely been a delight to work with. When we needed to do things, he made sure we got them done. You know, we were back in the back, and we heard that Tom Ed and his staff were recognized. And I'd be remiss if we didn't say, and I'm going to do this on your behalf too, Mr. Mayor, that we asked them to stand again. And let me make a couple of points here. Tom Ed Wilson, I'm going to tell this on you, Tom Ed. We're doing a conference call. I was in Savannah, Georgia, and everything that you got from this company was, here's the list, we need it back tomorrow. And on a Friday night, we got a list with 28 questions that they needed back at the end of the day on Saturday, I think. But anyway, all the staff came in, and we did it. I was on a conference call from Savannah with them for an hour and a half. And Tom Ed, Trevor said one of the delights of his working for you was to see you in blue jeans. On a Saturday morning. Tom Ed is, of course, one of the better dressers in this town. But he was in there with them on Saturday morning. But his entire staff, Jed Marston and Hayes Ledford and Lindsay Hyatt and Steve Hyatt, and the whole group. And I'm going to single out Trevor. Trevor is one of those professionals that work night and day, literally. A one day last week. It wasn't unusual to get a call late in the afternoon or sometimes at night from Trevor. And it was, getting close to 9 o'clock. And Jan and I were sitting there, and she said, how's everything going? I said, well, pretty good. Had a pretty good day today. I said, why do you ask? She said, well, I hadn't heard from Trevor yet. And it's like he was standing around the corner waiting for the signal. He called right then. But it was not unusual to get those calls that time of night. Hayes and Jed and all these guys, they responded on quick turnaround. And I can't say enough about the effort that the chamber made. And Tom Ed, for you and all your staff, I want you to stand and take a bow. Thank you. Let us salute you. Come on, guys. I know that as you have been asked to contribute over the years about the Can Do project, you wondered what they were doing with the Can Do. Well, now you see it. And it's a result of much of your generosity from the private sector as well as the city and the county. Putting together that group of people, those tools to make something happen with. And I know that you got a program and you came in from this past Tuesday. And there's a thank you on the back there to an awful lot of people because the list is long and long, but you gave, and we thank you because you helped make a lot of this possible. I worked with, I started in this effort in 1994. I worked with 4 different mayors, finally found one that could do something. I worked with lots of county commissioners, and some of them are here today, and they're wonderful partners, city council members, 2 governors. And I had the privilege of hearing from Governor Sundquist this morning. And he and I visited and talked about how difficult it was to get the land in the proper perspective, to secure it, and get the titles clear, get everything in place. And then he pledged to build an interchange for us at Enterprise South. $23 million worth. Now that's a real step of faith. That's a leap forward that made a difference in what we did Tuesday. And then along comes Governor Bredesen. And we couldn't ask him to do more. He did everything he should in this last go around to make sure that we were competitive. When he came into office and they were doing the welcome and thank you tour that governors do after they win an election, Mayor Corker and I sat down with him over near the Hunter and had a cup of coffee and talked to him about the interchange, the planning, the design that was being done. And we said, Governor, we need you to finish that for Enterprise South. And he was kind of non-committal, and he jogged us along a little bit. And finally, he says to Matt Kisber, who was with us, Matt, do you know how to spell interchange? And of course, we all reached for a pen so he could write it down. But he finished that interchange. And it was one of those next steps that we take. And then we had the support from the city council and the county commissions on buying land and putting in infrastructure. You know, it would make sense if those people had said to us, wait a minute, you're going to put some more money out there? The city's going to put some more money out there? The county's going to invest more money out there? But it made a difference this past Tuesday. Legislative delegation, working with the state, working with the governors, have been outstanding. And we thank you all for all those efforts. Bob Corker, Zach Wamp, Lamar Alexander, all of those people have pitched in. And they were working to help us at times when nobody knew what was going on and what they were doing. But it never, ever stopped. And I'm going to take a few questions in a few minutes. And remember, when I'm here, the rule is if you ask hard questions, I don't answer them. If you ask easy ones, I'll try. But as we go through this process, part of what we wanted to say to Volkswagen was, you're in a special place. And we went about doing that. And to have a special place, you have to have had a long vision, a vision for a long time back. And you go back to when Dalton and Gene and Janine and so many people were working on the river walk and the river parks. And you got Venture and all these other organizations, that the visioning process. And this community stepped up and started that process. Yeah, it's pretty hard to imagine that you would think about building a 12 or 13-mile walk along the river. Who's going to get out and take that? One of the most popular places in town now. It was part of a community. And then a fellow named Jack Lupton had this wild dream about building a fish tank. Lee, you remember when it was called a fish tank? And they made fun of it. But he had a vision. And it became a part of all of this. And then John and Bob came along. I'm not being flippant with names, but Mayor Kinsey and Mayor Corker, when they call you at 7 o'clock in the morning, you can call them whatever you want to. But they came along and started the downtown redevelopment. And once again, the private sector stepped up and was part of that. The riverfront, this building, and so much more. It was all part of this whole process of Chattanooga. And then you have the private investors who continue to see possibilities with this community and a future with this community. Alstom spending better than $300 million down here in the old combustion facility for a state-of-the-art facility to build the next generation of generators for the nuclear industry. Blue Cross with enough faith to see their corporate headquarters be built over here on the hill. And it goes on and on and on. McKee just invested in several $1 million in addition. By the way, Ron and I got to tour the honey bun factory the other day. Now, that's a fun thing to do. And they give you samples. And I'm going to remind Nelson Bowers that when I went to the honey bun factory, they gave us a sample. And Ron, I don't know about you, but I'm going to ask for one of these. Just a sample to see what it's like. But I've said those things, and I've talked a little bit about the process, and we'll talk about more of it as you have questions to get us to here. What's next? Where do we go? What does this community do? When Dr. Spadoff said to me after a breakfast one morning, your site's not ready. I can't see it. The trees are in the way. He'd been looking at soybean fields and cotton fields. And I told him, you all are scheduled to be back in 2 weeks, and you'll be able to see it. Ron and I got together that afternoon, and we literally started moving equipment into that site, city and county equipment, that day, that afternoon. The Harold Austins and the Lee Norris and the engineers, and there was a gathering out there. Chairman Hullner was there with me, and it just came together. And over the next few weeks, I saw workers take pride in what they were doing. These are county employees, these are city employees, and these are private contractors. But it became their project. And I saw a spirit that you don't see very often. Harold Austin, who heads up our highway department, says usually when you get city and county employees together, they either don't work well together or they fight or something. And he said, then you throw in some private contractors, you really have got chaos. But it never happened on this project. Those leaders met every morning to see where it was going that day. And it was city employees, it was county employees, and it was private contractors. And I would be out there, or Ron would be out there, and they would stop with you. These are workers. They might be running a chainsaw, they might be running a bulldozer, and they'd say, what are you hearing? when we're going to know something. They took pride in the fact that they were making something happen for this community. And then we follow that up with this past Tuesday. And I saw an excitement in this community that I have never seen. A whole community coming together to celebrate a very special occasion, to celebrate a future, to celebrate what's going to happen in our community. And it's especially sweet when you think about what's happening with our national economy, that we're talking about economic opportunity and the possibility of prosperity for this community and a whole region when factories are closing in other places and businesses going downhill. So we're in a unique position. And before I take any questions, I want you to think about this a minute. I want us to build on that spirit that I saw out there with those workers. I want to build on that spirit that we saw over at the Hunter Tuesday. I want a whole community to come together and think. I am absolutely convinced, if I don't make it out of this building, I'll die convinced that this community can do anything it decides to do, and you'll do it well. And here's what I want to do. As we met with the manufacturers this morning, as we met with Volkswagen, as we've talked with Vicki Gregg and Blue Cross, as we talked with the folks at Ostrom and getting them to come to do their expansion here, we talked about that community spirit. We talked about that opportunity. And I've heard and heard and heard people in this community say, we need opportunity. Our kids have had to move. Opportunity has knocked, and it's here. Now the question is, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to change our attitude about public schools and Chattanooga State and UTC and Southern College and all the other schools around here and create an educated, trainable workforce? Amen, brother. If you don't do that, don't worry about Volkswagen. Somebody will come in to take those jobs because they have to have that kind of employee. Austin has to have that kind of employee. Vicki Gregg has to have that kind of employee. Or Jack McKee at the bakery. Or wherever, to all of your businesses. But where are we going to step in there and say, if it's not being done right, let's do it right? Say to your employees, as you go through your plants and your factories and your business, how's your child doing in school? Are they attending or are they learning? Are they going to learn and are they coming out with some education? Because they're not going to be able to apply for these jobs. They're not going to be able to work at Blue Cross. They're not going to be able to work at the bank. These are different jobs than were here 25 or 30 or 40 years ago. The technology is amazing. You know, one of the things that happened when those guys were out there, guys and ladies were out there clearing that site, the mayor's IT department, I don't know where they got it, but they got some surveillance cameras from somewhere. They may have a police department that had some. But the technology is such in this country right now that the city IT department streamed live video to Germany about that site being worked. You wouldn't have thought about that 25 years ago because you couldn't have done it. But that happened. That was part of the selling process, and Ron's people did that. That's the kind of jobs that are out there. They are high-tech jobs. When Austin talks to us about welders, I grew up on a farm, and I see my friend Lamar McDaniel here, and we all learned how to take a cutting torch or a blowtorch and a coat hanger and daub something back together where it would stick if we broke it. That's not the kind of welder we're talking about here, folks. We're talking about metallurgy. We're talking about people who have skills, who have education, who can be trained to do these things. Now, this community is at a crossroad. We're on a high right now that this community hadn't experienced in a long, long time. And the question is this: do you take it here? Do you let it float? Or do you let it sink? This group here can make that happen. You talk to your employees, you make sure they're getting a good education. Their children are getting a good education, a continuing education. Jim Cantanzaro and the University of Tennessee can't teach them something else if they can't read. And mothers and daddies ought to know whether a child can read or not. That's the basic. It's almost embarrassing to say it. But if we're going to have the community we all want, and to build on what's happened here, we have exceptional opportunity. The question is, what are we going to do with it? What's going to be that attitude? What's going to be that commitment? If you don't have a commitment to go to school and get an education, what kind of commitment are you going to have when you go to work for Bud Shearer? I can tell you this, he's not going to have a good attitude about showing up late. I promise you this, he won't change the hours. It's habit. It's attitude. Do it right and do it now. We've had everybody from Oak Ridge and the University of Tennessee. The morning Dr. Spotoff told me we need to do something at that site, we had the president of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. We had Chattanooga State. We had the Sim Center. We had Thomas Zacharias from Oak Ridge. We had Tom Ballard here talking about technology and skills that were available for this company. And they're here. Opportunity is here. What are we going to do with it? I ask you, let's do something good with it. Thank you very much.
You want to take questions?
Yeah.
Claude has agreed to take your questions, and if your questions don't get answered now, he's graciously agreed that this evening, if you'll call him at home, his number's in the book, he'll answer any question that you have.
Isn't that just like a lawyer? Any questions? Yes.
This is not a question, it's just a comment, but I want to thank all of the leadership for selecting the Hunter Museum to make this announcement. I just think it says worlds about the value that we put on quality of life.
Guess who selected that site? The company. The company selected that site. We had taken them on a tour, and one of the board members who helped make that decision, who helped ratify that decision on Tuesday morning, stood on the porch. I'm from the country. It's a porch. It's probably called something else at the Hunter, but that's what it is. Overlooking the river. And he said, I didn't know this about Chattanooga. I didn't know it. And when Jed and the folks from Volkswagen were touring sites, and what's interesting, they were telling us to prepare two different versions. One was if it came to Chattanooga, and one if it didn't. And he's out letting these folks look at sites, and they chose the Hunter. That was one of the sites they wanted to go look at. They said it about our community. All of us have been saying it a long time, what a special place we have. But a man comes from Germany and says, we came to Chattanooga because all other things were pretty well equal. Incentives, land, but the intangibles were tangibles. That's one of them. Yes?
We all heard the figure of $1 billion being spent here in this community, which is wonderful. I wondered if you could expand just, we know it's a manufacturing facility, but could you tell us just a little bit more about what they plan to
They're going to build a manufacturing facility. And they will have a corporate headquarters for VW manufacturing North America. I suspect there will be some research and development facilities there as well. Yes?
All of the experts, Richard said, do you think that they're, you say whether or not that physically changed, or was it, in your opinion, ever going to be changed?
I never thought we were out of it. I'd get up and read we were out of it pretty often. That's an interesting thing. You had all those reports going around, and it was Huntsville. Nothing's ever said about us. We were going to get a second prize of an engine plant. Well, what Trevor and the chamber staff and Ron and I were dealing with, and the folks from the state, Matt Kisber and Governor Bredesen, man, what a hard-working group of people that was. But what we kept seeing was signs pointing toward us. In the questions they were asking, in the detail they were inquiring about, everything was headed in that direction. We met with in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks from yesterday with them. And we left there feeling good. We read that morning before we left, he was going to Huntsville. Matter of fact, we met the Alabama delegation coming out of the office as we were going in. And I'll bet they were surprised. But we got to present our case once again. We visited with the company in Dallas, Texas, and in Washington, and many times here. And I can tell you this, that was disheartening at times to read something contrary to what you were seeing. But we never lost sight of that. And the team kind of developed a saying among ourselves: keep putting one foot in front of the other. Keep doing it. Keep going. And as we talked to each other, I'd call Trevor and he would pep me up. I'd talk to Ron, and all this was about what's going to happen here. And just so everybody knows, in all those meetings, and I've asked Trevor, I asked the governor, I asked Matt Kisber, Ron and I have talked about it, and I didn't miss any meetings, but an engine plant has never been mentioned. So you can believe everything you read in Tom Griscom's paper, but not those others. Somebody else? Yes, sir. Well, the question is, first about air service, and we hope to continue to improve air service. The airport authority has done great work in getting some other options. The airlines right now are kind of like some other things. They're kind of going this way, and attracting somebody else will certainly depend on the amount of traffic coming in and out of here. But we're pretty optimistic about that they'll help bring some more people to attract additional service. And the other question was about the excess land. Enterprise South is about 6,000 acres. 2,800 of those acres is set aside as a buffer zone. When Becky Browder and Steve Leach and so many of us were working on that, those hilly areas that couldn't be used very easily for economic development were turned into and given to us by the Army through the National Park Service as a passive park. And that was something that interested the company officials. We invited them to help us continue with the plan out there to make that passive park something special. Now, passive park to me means a place to walk and ride bicycles, and we're preparing that sort of thing now. But the company is very sensitive about the environment, and they liked that idea, and they thought it was something that would be good that they might want to participate in. But there's 6,000 acres there, 2,800 of it in a buffer zone. The company's getting about 1,300 acres. There's another 275, Trevor, I'm going off the top of my head now, 275 or so that's ready now, and there will be another 15 to 1,700 later that'll be available a little later on. We're pretty sure there's some suppliers who are interested in that, and we're going to work our way through that. Jerry? I would comment about this, Jerry. I'm so proud of TVA. I'm so proud of Harold DePriest and Diana Bullock and David Wade and the staff at EPB working with TVA. See, TVA had an interesting point of view. TVA was going to get it either way. So they couldn't offer to help us more than they could help Huntsville, and we made sure that that was the way it was. But I'm going to tell you, your local electric power board people were absolutely outstanding. Their technical ability and their commitment to do good things for this community is very special, and I think they deserve a hand. Any more? You through? Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. We had wanted to initially play Donkey Shane by Wayne Newton when you drove in, but we thought maybe that was a little too much. But we do want to congratulate you on an outstanding job over many years.
Had a lot of help.
Last week we talked about, in reading the Rotary and the Dynamo from 1914, about naysayers or knockers. And Lord knows in this project, Mayor, there were more knockers than could go around for a while. That is until last Tuesday. But that took care of it. And in 1914, the consideration was in Chattanooga, they were trying to attract a war munitions plant. There were people that opposed it, and the city fathers wanted it to come in, but that was the same type dispute that we got in here. Mayor, we'd like to present you at this point a couple of mementos of your success today. One is from Ron Harr, and what it is, it's a weary but happy, elated Claude Ramsey coming down the steps with phonetic German, far from giving up.
I'm glad you pronounced that.
We want to thank Ron for that. Secondly, we wanted to buy you a car much like the one you drove in with this morning, but the problem was a couple of weeks ago my inauguration took a little bit more money than we had budgeted, so we weren't able to do that, but we did want to present you with your own Volkswagen.
It's a diesel. Thank you.
You'll recall at your roast, as I reminded Bud from a few months back, that Zach Wamp presented you with a flower with a car on top of it and called it a Toyota plant that you'd never gotten. So certainly this is far better than that.
It died.
It died. Exactly. I want to thank our guests today, Mayor Littlefield, elected officials, and again, congratulations to all of you that made this happen. Again, the best news that this city's seen in my lifetime, and certainly no doubt yours. Next week, our speaker is Ricky Pierce from GPS, who graciously agreed today to move her program back a week to accommodate this certainly timely program. Today, our Fellowship and Visitors Committee will meet with Chairman Liddell McCullough, and let's meet behind the curtain. Sounds like the Wizard of Oz, but behind the curtain in the back there. And we're adjourned.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.